So let's begin. Let's talk about grief. Let's first understand grief. Anyone, what is grief? Thoughts, feelings? I know, right? It's just there, walking with me, always with me. This is the shortest definition I can give you because there are some varieties depending of definitions, depending from science, from psychology, but it's basically the process of adapting to loss. I know everyone thinks immediately of death, right? Someone passing away. We'll find out that it's not just physical passing. It has anything to do with a role, a relationship, an identity, a meaning. If any one of these changes or you lose them, this can elicit the feeling of grief, the state of grief. So it's not just death, identity, meaning, roles. We are trying to reorganize around that change, the loss. We naturally attach. That's what gives us meaning. Me to Maja, or me to my mother, you to your children, you to your parents, you to your dog, cat, whatever. That attachment, you've created a relationship, a meaning, something in it, whatever it is. If that changes, it will elicit it. Now, because I do a lot of meditation and I follow a lot of the Buddhist teachings, I found this so accurate that grief is when attachment meets impermanence. Impermanence means change. And you know what is the only constant in our life is change, impermanence. Which should already give you insight that if we feel uncomfortable with change, grief becomes harder. So, anyone want to see what they feel could be sources of grief? What are sources of grief that come to mind? And if you're online, you can send a message through and Nadia will read it out. Any ideas what are sources of grief other than physical death, for example?
Ending of a relationship.
Ending of a relationship, definitely. Can be romantic, can be any friendship. Anyone else?
Life goals that end up like
not happening.
Plan in life goals because of the separation or something.
Yep. Yeah. Other than Maikan?
Exiting your company.
Yes. Business ending or selling it. Anyone else? Okay. Here's a few. Divorce or heartbreak. Doesn't have to be in a marriage. Friendship ending. Even though you know it's the right thing to end it, you can still feel grief. Identity change. And I mean, you're a woman, business owner, and you become a mother. This can create grief. You're a single woman and now you're a married woman. This can create grief. You can be wealthy and become poor, identity. This is also financial loss. Losing a job, relocation or leaving home, even though you decided it, you can feel grief. Healing realizations. When you heal, you discover parts of yourself, which means your identity changes. That can create grief. You are not who you thought you were. Of course, war will do this naturally. Displacement, which is when you have to move like a refugee. Another source of grief that I didn't list here, for example, is those who work as caregivers or those who are animal rights activists. When you're continuously seeing the abuse or the misuse of power or the trauma day in and day out, it changes the way you feel about the world. Now, of course, relationship changes. So, for example, husband loves me so much because he doesn't work, because he's not working right now, but now he's working. He makes a lot of money, but he's not around to emotionally support me. This is a good change, but I still feel grief maybe. Or it can be the opposite. He was working so much and now he's at home and now we don't have money. So maybe that can create it. This kind of change can create grief. But I'm going to talk more because I know you can relate to this quite well. I'm going to talk about these three. This is quite researched. Disenfranchised grief, ambiguous loss, anticipatory grief. Let's talk about disenfranchised grief. This is the grief that is not socially recognized. Like, why are you sad? It's fine. Any ideas what that could be? Things that are not socially accepted. Miscarriage, infertility. You can feel grief, even though you know you cannot have a child, you can still feel grief. It's not just God's decision. Take it, don't worry, you still feel grief. Relationship loss, even if you broke up, even if you know it's for your best. Estranged family members that you know it's not healthy to be with them, to be around them, but this breaks you because the distance, you're mourning, even though they're alive, they're not in your life. Identity loss, becoming wealthy and being responsible, becoming a mother. This is very common. Mothers going through that grief that now they can't focus on their own business or own relationships. Their time is gone. Fathers have this too. And grieving while someone's still alive. You'll see how this relates to anticipatory grief. But any questions about this? So when someone has this, you can get the feeling of wanting to be isolated. You don't want to be around people because people may not understand that you are feeling grief, even though you can't be around this partner or this husband or this wife or this sister or brother because they're not safe to be with. It can be confusing for you to experience this. And definitely, you most likely will feel like you want to move on prematurely. It's okay. It's okay. It's God will. She's toxic. He's toxic. But the grief is still there. We have ambiguous loss as another one, also researched a lot. The losses that have no clear ending. Missing loved ones in war. You don't know if they're alive or dead. When, for example, someone has dementia or Alzheimer's, they're breaking down, they're aging. It's a process. It can take 1 month, it can take 10 years. This is ambiguous. There's no start or there's no end. Estranged relationships, sisters, brothers, children, and of course, unresolved separation. So in here, this is really researched a lot by Pauline Boss. There are two types, physically present, but psychologically absent. It can even be the one you're with in your house, but they've changed. Maybe they're going through a trauma, and so they can't respond to you, but they're physically engaging and all that. That can create it. It can also be addiction, emotional absence, personality change. The human brain wants the certainty of endings and to be moving on, but this doesn't allow that. And then the other one is, I said physically absent, I said the other one, physically absent and psychologically present. You know, when you're a mother or a father and your child is off to university, that can create grief. You don't know when they're going to come back to visit because the prices of the tickets are high. There's a war starting. This can create grief. You don't know what the outcome will be. That's also where divorce, when it's happening, but there's still attachment. You still need to co-parent. You still need to go through the financials. This can create grief. Anticipatory grief. This refers to the grief before the loss.
It's about to happen.
It's about to happen. It will happen. We know it. Like medical illness, like breaking up. You know it's going to happen. Like having to say goodbye to a friend. This one is most researched though for like in hospice and palliative care for people who are passing away. So you can screenshot anything if you're online. You can take a photo if you want at any point. This is usually really present in terminal illnesses. You can imagine that you know this person will pass away. And you feel a series of emotions from longing, gratefulness that they're in your life right now. You feel care and love. And you also feel guilty because there's a relief that's going to come when they pass. This is what comes with this kind of grief. Same with divorce. You will have that when it's very difficult. You will have this anticipatory grief of I'm really gratitude that we're together still, that everything we've done together, appreciation. But I'm very sad and lots of mourning that we're going to be separating. But also I'm looking forward that this doesn't keep on going. Long-term caregiving, impending separation, right? So you will have this wave of sadness before the death and the loss occurs. You actually emotionally prepare for it. And you usually, not you, I mean, humans, will feel relief following the death or loss. And that, if they feel guilt with that, you can see how uncomfortable that makes the process of grief. That relief is normal to experience. So at first, they thought that when you had this anticipatory grief, when the person passed away or there was a finish point, then you would actually process grief better or you wouldn't feel grief. This is not true. But it does help that process. It does help alleviate it if you're present with the anticipatory grief, you're coping with it, and we'll talk about how to cope with it, and not running away from it. Maybe doing, lots of addictions or maybe escaping through work. But it shows that it doesn't eliminate the post grief. What it will do, though, is make it, from what I see with my clients, more to have to dig through as you're doing healing afterwards. So this is the types, where it can come from. You see so many sources of grief, so many. And here we're thinking it's just death. Yeah. There's also grief that can happen from children to parents as we leave them. Of course, a lot of time is relief and happiness, but there's grief, when we know we're going to be going off as children to school or getting married or leaving them to fend for themselves. Now, there are two ways that you can generally see grief appearing. These two ways can be shattering, completely shattering grief. These are my terms, but they're backed by research in different ways. And the quiet grief. This is super important to know too, because maybe you are familiar with the type of shattering grief that everyone's breaking down and crying. And, you see this and you'll see that you will get commented on. Why are you not crying? Why are you're not grieving? You're not shattering? You'll see why this is not the only way you need to be grieving. But a lot of people are familiar with this grief. They make there's a big release or something. But this type of grief is the one that totally destabilizes your life. Comes from sudden loss. Someone passing away suddenly. You were not seeing that coming. Traumatic circumstances. Loss of a child or partner, something close. Betrayal out of nowhere. You felt safe. A loss that alters one life direction. You have goals and now it's not going anywhere near that. Events that break a person's assumption of the world. I've lost a D there. This is so important. We're going to talk a lot more about this one because this is what is going to be able to help you reconstruct who you are while you're experiencing grief after this kind of shattering of loss. So when we have this, our identity, whoever you think you are, you know your name. You know your name. Okay, my name is Kartika, I know, but who I am is changing completely. So I know who I am. I know I'm a woman. I know I'm doing what I'm doing. But what gives me meaning? What gives me identity? This one is what changes. My worldview has collapsed. What does that mean? The ideas that I have about the world, that it's safe. What if suddenly someone comes and robs my house? Now, that is an assumption that is not valid. So my identity and meaning of the world has changed. The world is unsafe. What that does to my nervous system, the construct, the worldview completely changes. If I never think I'll get cheated on, and that's my worldview, and then someone cheats on me, that can create this shattering grief. Meaning structures will break, that the people who love you will never hurt you. That's kind of an assumption right there, or a belief. My nervous system will get destabilized, dysregulation will increase. I mean, it's a complete shock to the system. So usually with this, people feel like nothing makes sense anymore. Like, who am I? What is this world? What I have to do to get an understanding of what's happening here? And There is a lot to be said in terms of studies that show what happens if you don't process this. This can really lead to more clinical disorders, which we will talk about very briefly. But this is most important because the assumptions you have of the world are no longer valid. So we operate with these assumptions. The world is meaningful. The reason why someone does something is for this reason. The world is relatively safe. We assume that. You assume that when you get on your bike or when you get in the car, you're going to be okay. 3, the self is worthy and capable. That I have willpower. I can exert my power in the way to choose what I want to eat or where I want to go. So when a major loss happens, this changes completely. What is the meaning if my child dies? What is the meaning when bombs are going off and killing citizens who are just living their life? What does it mean that I have a severe illness when I'm doing everything? Does that make sense? How this can be experienced? Right? So it breaks the assumptive world, whatever you think the world is. The identity is often destroyed. Time feels distorted. This is a key factor here. This type of experience can actually become traumatic, but like PTSD traumatic, but not necessarily always. Here, it's not just emotional, it's existential. This is so important to register, especially if you're a healer or working in the wellness industry, that sometimes the grief is about, well, do I have meaning? Do I have purpose? Is there order in the world? Because if you don't have that as a child or as a human, how do you operate and navigate if it's empty? You need a kind of center for this. Yeah, so this is quite overwhelming to go through. So here is a few. Maybe if you have this, you want to create this, but it can break in these moments. I know who I am in my life. The future will unfold as I expect, as I plan. Some people are protected, or good people are protected by God. These are the types of assumptions, beliefs we can have that we navigate and create our world from. All of this can break in those moments. Now, in shattering grief, yeah, this will change people completely, permanently. It's meant to. I'll show you why. The event is not the problem. So please know it's meant to change you permanently. The goal is not to return to who you were before. It's definitely not to try to control the process. The goal is to rebuild your life around the loss and the lessons that you have learned. Here's an example. A woman is becoming a mother, or a father is expecting fathers becoming a father. I'm giving the example of a mother because the body changes, mind changes, everything changes. And then you'll have the mother say, I'm going to go back to how I used to live, work this way, exercise this way, all the attachments. That the assumption is in there that I'm going to be able to return, bouncing back, pre-baby brain, everything that's happening in there, that my time will be the same, that my control will be the same, instead of grieving that it's not possible to go back. In fact, you're supposed to create a whole new structure in how you relate to it. Now, what about when someone passes away or you have a heartbreak? The person leaves you and you didn't see that coming. When this happens, you cannot go back to who you were before that love. You cannot. It has already changed you. And the assumption that this man or woman will be with you forever, that they're the love of your life, this is also an assumption. And that you will always be loved and you'll always be safe. Now, you feel the loss. You feel that that's not true, and you rebuild with that knowledge. There are different ways that the new meaning can be created. We'll look at that in a few moments. So, this requires time to reorganize. You cannot speed this process. You have to create a new identity. Well, what kind of mother do I want to be? What kind of wife do I want to be? What kind of man do I want to be? How do I want to rebuild my life? So that it has meaning and the right identity for me now as a new mother or as a new father or as a business owner or as a non-business owner. These are all the things we got to recreate. It takes so much effort to do this. Now let's talk about quiet grief. We have shattering grief. It changes you permanently. It's an event that happens and then boom, it changes you. Quiet grief, this one slowly reshapes you. What kind of grief would, what kind of events would bring this? This is the type of thing that changes you. Oh, sorry, this is in the wrong order. Childhood that was more painful than you realized. This one is the one that I'm most familiar with from my own story. I created a fantastic identity that I'm fine. I had a great childhood, which I did if I compare it to like logically, but the internal world was not at all what I consciously realized I was actually experiencing. When I realized the amount of emptiness, loneliness, loss that I was experiencing, that made me realize I'm also a wounded child. I'm also in many ways a victim, and I never would want to feel that victim, which is that's why I'm overly independent and masculine. So I shattered my identity with my story. This is really the most difficult, surprising part for most people who come in for hypnotherapy or healing, is that they are not who they thought they were. They find themselves surprised that they actually have this much hatred towards their mother or father. But they always say, I love my mom, I love my dad. But when they realize the effects that that parent had on them, how much it got trapped in them, they're shocked. Oh my God, I can be this hateful. Yeah, this is you as a human. That's the kind of thing that will change you. Right. The things that end the relationship, it can be long or it can be immediate, but it's a process. It changes you. Loss of health, fertility, physical ability, family changes, letting go of a version of yourself you once believed in. These are all the things that bring the quiet grief. You have a lingering feeling of sadness, sorrow, tenderness. There's nothing explicit. Just you feel this ocean of sadness, sense of nostalgia, longing. You don't even know for what sometimes. Feeling different from who you used to be. Periods of reflection about the past, slow shift in identity, and feeling in me that something has changed, but I don't know what. This can be equally confusing, right? Why am I sad? Why am I feeling so heavy? This is how I hear it with my clients. This kind of change is very transformative. Now, it's definitely, people don't pinpoint it as clearly because there's not one particular event that really you can see. It's you quite often invisible. And they happen over time. This is part of the disenfranchised grief we talked about. So sometimes this can be a dream. You know the dream is not going to happen, the relationship's not going to happen. That grieving changes you. The next dream you have may be more realistic, or the way you approach the relationship next person that you're with will be more realistic. But it's changed you. That's what I mean. It changes who you are. It changes your belief, your version in yourself. Ah, loss of faith. I forgot to mention that. Loss of faith. It can be in God, it can be in a human. This changes you, how you relate to religion, to spiritualism. You meditate, 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 and you don't feel the benefits. This can create a grief. You can pray to God and it doesn't, yeah. So this is usually quiet and internal. Your mind and your heart here are reorganizing. Now, both are totally real. One, explosive. People can collapse from trauma. The other one is very slow and quiet, but deep. They're very real, both of them. Totally normal and absolutely human. Some people, when people die, they will grieve this way. Ha. No. Some people will grieve in the quiet way, and others will grieve in the explosive way. And they may be concerned, why am I not grieving in the big way? Did I not miss them? Did I not love them? I feel shame. Not at all. You may have been processing anticipatory grief. You may have been processing ambiguous loss. We don't know. It can happen like that. Right. So then let's see why does even grief happen? Like, how does it even happen in the situation in life? These are what happens, right? Your nervous system changes, your body recalibrates, your mind changes, but we have to look more specifically, because if we can understand where this appears, we can see it not coming in terms of try to prepare, but we can understand this makes sense why my child, my lover, my mother, my father, why I am potentially grieving right now. The first one, grief can come as attachment rupture. Attachment means bond. We know humans are wired for bonding. This is literally how we co-regulate, find our grounding if we have co-regulation. So when this attachment figure, usually child to mother, father, or us to our partner, or us to our pet, when this attachment figure disappears, it literally registers as a threat, danger. This is, you're wired for this. So you like it or you don't like it, you like your mother, you like your father, or you don't, you will still have this reaction. So it produces these feelings, longing, yearning, searching behavior. Where? Are they going to call me? You know that? I think we've all been there. They haven't WhatsApp me. Oh. Protest, distress. Babies do this. You can see the emotional pain, dysregulation. Now, this is biological. You can try to think you're above it. You cannot be. This is biological. It's nervous system is wired in you. And it turns out that they can actually see this in babies as young as 6 to 9 months of age very clearly, the attachment separation that happens and the grief appearing. It definitely grows bigger and bigger over time. You can see it with children, but the earliest observed already at 6 to 9 months. And this is coming from John Bowlby's attachment theory. So definitely, please know, grief is fundamentally biological and relational. When there's a break in that, you will feel grief. Now, for some people, it's not humans, it's their pet. Equally valid. That pet is their attachment figure. So when someone's pet passes away, you may not feel anything, but for them, this destabilizes them. Yeah. Let's talk about the second one out of 3. Grief can happen when there's an identity disruption. We talked about this, right? A change in attachment, change in identity. Humans will organize their life through identity, labels, roles. So one of the most important psychological functions is to create your identity. Then from there, you can go out and relate. Who I am relates to who's sitting here. We know this in psychology. So we see this especially in Asian versus Western cultures, that the Asian culture, the identity is going to be influenced by who's around, the characteristics that come out. The laughing one, the happy one, may only come out with friends, but never with the elders, if in the collectivistic like Japanese. Whereas in more like West, anywhere from Europe onwards, you are who you are, whoever's around. You can be selfish, whoever's around. You can be fun, whoever's around. But in the Asian one, no, it changes. But so your identity is disrupted. If that happens, in whichever way, country or culture you're in, you will experience likely a grief. This shows actually in death, even, that when your identity is disrupted, it literally feels like you've lost a part of yourself. This is already research. Your identity has changed. Wife to my husband who's passed. Daughter to my parents who've passed. Mother to my child who's passed. If that happens, I lose a part of myself. Of course you do. This is because you're not just your name, you're not just your body, you are the roles you have, the relationships you have, sister or brother or father or child or friend or business owner. These are roles that create your identity. And the narratives that you have about these roles in the future. That if I have a child, I will see them grow up and get married. And if I have a business, it's going to grow, and this is narratives I'm telling myself. Meaning structures around that experience in the future I'm going to have. So, yeah, like if I have a partner, I'll grow old together. If I have building a company, it'll be more impactful in the world. And the meaning structures found fairness, safety, life trajectory, purpose. This is back to the assumptions we have about life and the world. This identity disruption will bring up these questions. Well, then who am I? If I'm no longer the mother to my child because my child has passed away, then who am I? If I'm no longer a business owner, who am I? If I'm no longer a wife, who am I? If I'm no longer a student, who am I? What roles do I play? Purpose, usefulness. What is my place in the world? What gives my life meaning? This is why grief includes feelings such as disorientation, loss of direction, feeling untethered. Like, where am I grounding myself? Who's my anchor? Has anyone felt this one? I just hear deep breaths. Yeah. You can sit here if you want to. Right. So when we're going through phases from teenager to business owner or to going to university or getting married, this is all there. Who am I now? If we rush to it and we don't consciously, intentionally create that, the grief continues on. Now, let's go to the third and final one for this, meaning disruption. Your attachment changes, right? You can get grief. Your identity changes, you can get grief. Your meaning changes or gets disrupted, you can have grief. We're not just survival, though we definitely are. We have that in the brain, in the very, very core of our brain. We want to survive. But the outer parts of our brain about creating meaning. Now, this is where we will have an issue with grief arising grief will arise when we have an issue between the global meaning and the situational meaning. The worldview we have, the belief we have, values we have, don't match with the reality of the loss. So the mind struggles. Wait a minute, this is really strange. This is not lining up. And so research shows that this loss actually activates the cognitive and emotional systems at the same time, which creates confusion, rumination, searching for explanations, attempts to reconstruct a narrative. For example, the parent's child passes away. When they pass away, they're trying to find reasons why this happened. I'll give you a table in the next slide to give you an idea of how this looks. Why the breakup happened. Why the world is this way. You try to give a narrative to it to make sense of it because this is not how it's supposed to be. When we have childhood abuse, the child will do that. Oh, no, it's because mom was very overwhelmed, or mom didn't, know better, or I deserved it. I'm a bad kid. That's why I deserved all the beatings. People just can't make sense of it. They may literally say, I just can't make sense of it, or they're not making sense when they're talking about it. Could be this, could be that. It's like very chaotic mentally. So the brain is trying to rebuild meaning structures. I lost my mouse. There we go. Okay, let's look at this as a meaning disruption. If you have a loss of a parent, the meaning that could have been disrupted is someone older protects me in this world. And so you feel grief because now I'm unprotected. If you've lost your spouse, this is the person I will build my future with. That meaning is not there anymore. Also identity, right? But meaning. Loss of a child, but I'm the protector of his life. Loss of a mentor, someone guides me. My anchor. Loss through betrayal. The people I love are safe to be with. When you lose this, and this is the meaning that was disrupted, you can see how it conflicts, right? But wait, I'm supposed to protect my child. Or this friend was supposed to be the safe person I could trust. Here's another way to look at it. Global meaning, good people live long lives. or if you pray a lot, or something like this, and then the young person dies in a car accident. This happened a lot in Bali, actually, with the trees falling. I mean, on one car. And you can see people who know the person who passed away. This person was so good. How come that tree fell on that car and they were there? Your worldview ruptures. There is no order. What? How does this happen? So wait, if that means that's the case for that, then what about me if I'm not good or if I'm good? What does that mean about who I am? Life has a direction. The partner dies. Again, worldview ruptures, existential disorientation. I'm the protector of his life. The child dies. You see how it goes together? I am safe. And then the bombs start to drop like they are in Dubai. That changes your whole worldview. I mean, imagine this is happening in our country here in Bali. We're just living our life in Bali, and then suddenly things start to happen like this. We really would not be like, none of us are thinking that would even happen. People care and are inherently good. And then you find that the friend betrays you, your best friend and your partner are having an affair. Your CEO or CFO steals the money that you've mentored and that you've guided, and they take your money. So this brings up these questions. Now, these are just 3 bullet points, but what this does to your system is much deeper than just a bullet point. So all these 3 happen at the same time. Can you believe this is what you're going through when you're grieving? They're not happening as attachment and no, all at the same time. Your whole life is changing. Your whole person is changing. So a widow, someone who's lost their spouse, will experience attachment grief, missing the person, yearning, loneliness, right? We understand that. There's also meaning grief, questioning life direction. Where do I go from here? How much do I have to do? What does this mean for my future? About the children, questioning beliefs about fairness and purpose, reevaluating priorities, and identity grief, no longer being a wife, losing shared roles, feeling like a different person. At the same time, this is happening. So I want to make sure we touch on grief and trauma before we go into experiencing how it feels like to experience grief, just in case you don't know. I will go into that. But a lot of people are like, well, isn't grief like trauma? Actually, it goes together. No, trauma is one thing. Grief is a totally different thing, but they tend to go hand in hand in certain circumstances. Definitely trauma can complicate grief, and grief can be included in the traumatic experience. So they do overlap. You have nervous system dysregulation, you have social withdrawals, attachment system activations, identity. This is normal. You have the whole list on the screen here. This does happen. But grief is a response to the loss of attachment. Trauma is a response to overwhelming threat or helplessness. That can definitely go together, right? So you can have a car accident, not you, people can have a car accident, and that event can produce nothing in the person. They're resilient. Good, let's go. Some will have PTSD from that, but not grief. Some will have grief from that because of the conditions of the accident, and some will have both. Is that okay? So we can't say that every divorce is going to lead in grief or every divorce is going to be traumatic. We can't say that every single death is like that either. And very often, especially with childhood abuse, neglect, betrayal, trauma, these kinds of ones, especially childhood though, that's the one I will always find grief in. War, loss, these ones I will usually typically find it in. Divorce after long attachment, not all though. And parental abandonment, definitely. This will create grief in the child, no matter how, that's what I find. Of course, maybe some people don't say that. But I will find that we have to get to the layer of grief that my parents have abandoned me. They've given me up. Can be as a young child, can be as an adult. And in the healing, the childhood that wasn't safe, that has to be grieved. The parent that could not love me properly, that has to be grieved. And for some children who are young, adults or even adults or seniors, this type of relationship that the mother and or the father cannot love them as they are is something that they will carry each and every day for the rest of their life. That I cannot be loved as I should have been loved. This is why the childhood abuse and neglect really can create some very deep, deep, raw emotions about life to appear, how we experience life, that I'm not loved as I should have been. So you carry this each and every day. This is heavy, but you'll see that we can carry it in a healthy way. The relationship that cannot be repaired. And the way I had to shape my identity to survive, that can create grief. Now, let's talk about experiencing grief. Because we know how this happens. That's understanding grief. We know where it can come from. We know how it can appear. Maybe this gives you insight already, the types of sources of grief. I hope we all realize that it's way more, not complex, but there's more information that we probably all were exposed to growing up. But how do we experience grief in our system? First, we got to know it's biological. Biological means literally it affects your body, hormones, brain, physiology. Here is the research that's going to happen when you're experiencing grief. Inflammatory changes, sleep disruption, brain fog, fatigue, heaviness in the chest, immune changes, increased cortisol. This is all research, especially by Naomi Eisenberger. It's the same pathways as social rejection and physical pain that actually get activated when you have grief. This is literally why we can feel painful experiences in our body when there's grief. You feel the chest go in. You can feel the sinking of the stomach. Now, this, of course, will take time to regulate. I have a lot of information about the left ventricle and the blood is pumped less effectively. But I think we need to talk about actual research examples of when grief appears. Have we heard about the widowhood effect? Anyone? No. So the widowhood effect. This is very large studies of death of a spouse associated with temporary increase in mortality risk, especially in the first few months after loss. Yeah, we know it actually, but this is the term. 30 to 90% in the first 3 months after the death of a spouse, because the grief is so immense. This does not mean grief directly creates the death, of course, but it can show how profound loss can affect the body. Human beings regulate each other's nervous systems through relationship. So when that is disrupted, identity meaning is also there. This is overwhelming. The adjustment takes a lot of time. If we don't have the support around us and the processing, the coping skills, this can be much harder. Then we have Takotsubo syndrome. Interestingly, the name comes from the Japanese word Takotsubo, which refers to an octopus trapping pot with a narrow neck and a round base. When this condition occurs, the left ventricle of the heart temporarily changes shape, literally changes shape, and it happens after intense emotional, physical stress like grief. It literally pumps blood less effectively, and they will have an experience like a heart attack. Chest pain, shortness of breath, faintness or dizziness. It's real. It's not psychosomatic. It's real. The doctors will examine this. The heart arteries are fine. There's no blocked arteries and nothing that would usually cause a heart attack. Researchers believe this is triggered by the surge of stress hormones, especially adrenaline, And this literally overwhelms the heart temporarily. It's physical. That grief is so intense, it's physical. It stops the blood from pumping as much blood, the heart from pumping as much blood. Common triggers include death of a loved one, severe grief, sudden shock or fear, relationship loss, major financial stress, serious illness. So when someone's going through this, the worst thing you can say is it's in your head. Just get over it. There's biological impact on their system. This is why it's also known as a broken heart syndrome, this one. That you can have physiological impact from having a broken heart. Unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, most cases occur in women. This can have an effect, and it can actually go back to normal, recovering after a few weeks or months. And the last one, brain searching. This is not the clinical term, but this is fascinating. This is from neuroscience, that when someone we love dies, the brain does not immediately understand that the person is gone. They even could have been caregiving. They could have been taking them to the doctors. They could have been with them each day before they passed, but the brain has not been updated. Same with a heartbreak. So they found, researchers, that using brain imaging, the grief activates the areas of the brain associated with attachment and reward. And so this part of the brain is involved with motivation and seeking. In short, the brain doesn't register that is the person is gone. They think they're still alive. How does this appear? And some of my clients will get this. I still think she's going to call me. She's been passed away for 3 months, and he was there to the moment of her death. I still sometimes think I'm going to get her call. Or sometimes I pick the call up to call her. Oh, she's not here anymore. I want to share something good and I want to call my partner. Oh, they're not here in my life anymore. Feeling their presence in familiar places, reaching for their phone to call them, expecting to see the person walk in the room. They're not signs of denial. This is not denial. The brain is still updating. When we lose someone we love, the brain literally has to learn that the person is no longer physically here. And that learning takes process. And that grief will come in wave. So I'm going to give you an example of the client case. He's a 75-year-old man. Some of you may have heard this. He came in to address insomnia. His son reached out to me. The man has built many loving communities, quite successful in building what he wanted to build. He comes in for insomnia. Now, when you're aging, usually you don't have good sleep. This is one of the conditions. So I go through the medical things, but of course I'm not a doctor. So he has everything okay. The doctor says, oh, okay, we go into it. In the hypnotherapy session, he goes back to a moment when he was about 14, 15 years old. He's 75. He already has his family. He has many children. He's lived many places. And he's saying goodbye to his first love. At that time, there is no WhatsApp. There is no internet. It's letters. And they love each other, but his parents had to move. With this love, the promise to keep in touch, he moves away and they write letters to each other. But after about 3 to 6 months, her letter never came back. And so the love he had never gotten closure. Ambiguous loss. This person is somewhere in the world, happy, maybe she's passed. I miss her. I yearn for her. I'm mourning the relationship. All those decades, his heart was still processing it. Open. Now, mind you, he's built a beautiful life, has a loving wife that he loves too. But the heart didn't forget. That is ambiguous loss, carrying that. So we go through the appropriate steps to process that heartbreak and the goodbye properly, to give closure. And I'm very happy to say he slept better. He slept much better. But that kind of experience for decades, it's part of him now. It's part of his identity. That there was a love for someone that he had all these years. He'll never meet her again.
It should be a movie. Watch that movie.
You know, in that kind of love, he said afterwards, he said, I believe this is the reason why I can love so fully, because it's so open. He didn't realize it was because of that. But it was so open, my heart. Now, in case you didn't know, grief is also emotional. For some of us who are feeling tears coming up around the room here, grief is also emotional. May include, but not limited to, sadness, longing. This is the key one, longing. Longing. Anger, guilt, relief, and because it's so much, numbness. Numbness. This doesn't come in stages, it comes in waves. This, important though, please note, is the yearning, the longing. This is part of grief. I'm longing for this person. Not I'm weak because I'm longing for this person. This is grief. I'm longing to be held by this person, to be feeling this person. This is grief. So when someone says that, there's nothing you can say logically that says, oh, it's okay. It's better you're not with her or him. That yearning has to be honored. Maybe all you can do is hold them. All you can do is let them know you know how that feels. And this is literally the mind's attempt to restore attachment, the yearning. You don't want to go out and try to replace it. That's key. You just have to be with it. Also, grief is in the mind. This is where identity and meaning is. We have a disruption in how we identify ourselves in relation to the world. We can't concentrate. You want to try to concentrate as much as you want, you cannot. You will have intrusive memories. You're working on the computer and the memory of their smell or laughter or things they said that you did not really connect with until that moment. You're living like this, just or having tea or in the shower. It comes up like this. And it means something now. And so you can find yourself feeling a lot of emotions again, anger included, sadness included, rumination. What if this is so common? What if I had gone to the doctor earlier? What if I had done couple counseling sooner? What if I had made more money? And of course, searching for meaning. Uh, it can be even that was God's will, but in a spiritual bypassing way, not because it truly could be. This is again emphasizing the research from Robert Niemeyer, who's talking about the world assumptions that we have. Why did this happen? This is what's happening when you're saying that. Who am I now? So when a mother is grieving the loss of her child, and this case, this is the first time I went into grief work, and this was 10 years ago. No, sorry, 13 years ago. It was really early in my hypnotherapy. She came in because she had found, I'm sorry to say this quite directly, she had found her son had committed suicide in the garage. She walked in and the son was hanging. She found the body. And it'd been a year. Now, you cannot say, or you could say, but it's not going to be useful, get over it. It's 1 year. He's lived, God has taken him. It's meant to be. You try to say that to any father or mother, it does not go that way. So the question she had was, why did this happen? What if I had known that he was depressed, which he was? What if I had asked him more? What if I had followed him that night? What if I had called him that night? And because of that, who am I now? Am I a failed mother? Am I a bad mother? Same with business. This is the way we think about it too. And what does this mean for my future? Am I wounded? Am I unlovable? Am I ever going to make it? In that hypnotherapy session, what we did is we reconnected to the, if you believe or you don't, that's okay, but to the being, the energy, the soul of her son. And when they reconnect, she can find the closure here. She can speak it out, cry it out, feel it out. This is so important that she can have that process. And that process allowed her to find closure. By the end, the grief is not gone. It's something she will carry with her, something she will always have with her, but it's not determining her, controlling her. There's closure. So let's talk about why grief lingers, because we know it's going to be part of life. We know that it's going to come up in all these situations and in moments. So why would grief linger? Grief will linger for the following reasons. You're trying to cognitively control it. What does cognitively control it? It means you don't want to feel the emotions. You're going to intellectualize it. This is a process. We're going to go through it. 2, achievement orientation. That's going to be fine. I'm going to go and make a lot of money. I'm going to go find a new wife or husband. I'm going to, whatever. Emotional suppression, very, very common one. Because most of us are not trained to feel our emotion. We're not used to that. And we have too many responsibilities to start to feel our emotions. So we keep on pushing through. And survival adaptations that come from childhood, for example. In my case, I never knew I was grieving perpetually because it was not in my repertoire to feel emotions and feelings, to acknowledge the tensions. Got to survive. Now, what does need to be, well, I'm not going to get there yet. Let's talk about what happens when grief lingers. It is unnamed. We're not realizing it's actual grief. We're not realizing it's actual longing, yearning. We're not realizing this is grief. In my case, and for some of you, it appears as anger. You're actually grieving, but it appears as anger. You're angry at everyone. You're angry at the world. You're angry at how stupid everyone is. You're angry at the situation in this political situation in this country. The whole time it's just grief you're feeling, but it's coming out like that. It is invalidated. How do you think we do that as friends society? When grief is invalidated, we dismiss, minimize, or reject it. So you may come and say, oh, I feel grief because I've lost my pet, or I've changed jobs. I'm no longer a business owner. And we just say it was just a dog. Oh, you'll be fine. Now you can enjoy your free time. But you knew he was going to pass. A miscarriage happens too early, for example. You can always try again. You break up, you'll find another boyfriend or a girlfriend. A man loses a close male friend or betrayed by one and is told, just be strong, move on. Don't focus on it. I have so many examples from clients. A caregiver loses a person they were caring for years. Instead of grief, others expect maybe that they should have gratitude because God has taken them to a good place. Jangan nangis, don't cry. That is the worst thing you could potentially ever say. Don't cry. Be strong. Life circumstances. Oh, sorry, no. Number 3, there is no space to feel the grief. Life circumstances don't allow you to. For example, you lose a parent, but you got to go back to work. Otherwise, you're going to lose your job. You got to make money. You got to get straight A's. You got to pay your rent. You got to feed your children. You don't have time to grieve. A mother loses a partner, but must continue raising her children. A father loses his wife, but now has to continue taking care of the children, make money, take care of the children and the house, and the relationships so that the children have the friendships in the community. A business leader experiences a major personal loss, but must still continue running the company. Someone is responsible for handling all funeral logistics and estate matters. And so there's no time to grieve. That happens a lot when it's sudden death. A healthcare worker experiences repeated patient death, but that's her job and must keep on going. Perhaps a person experiences loss during a high pressure life moment, an exam, relocation, in childbirth. Maybe the mother passes and the baby's there, still alive. Number 4, the loss is ongoing or uncertain. This is the ambiguous loss. Loved one has dementia, physically present but psychologically absent. Partner disappears or abandons their relationship without explanation. Modern day ghosting. A family member struggles with addiction for years. You know that they are going through this. Maybe they're living with you, maybe they're on the streets. Nothing you can do. You have tried everything. This is grief. Immigration or war. And parent is emotionally unavailable because of life circumstance or trauma or mental illness or just lack of knowledge of how to be a healthy parent. So it's ongoing. So let me find that one. How do we do this practically? I think we all do this. Or I shouldn't say that. We all know this. We may do this. We stay busy. You may have the time, you may have the ability, you may have the support, but you choose to stay busy. You may start intellectualizing. Well, it makes sense that I feel grief because she passed, and then there's the stages we go through, and that's normal. No, you're not feeling it. You start to care for others. You over care for the children. You over care for whoever else is around. You start to bake more. Sometimes that's actually quite healing. I'm not going to lie. Humor. You are bringing humor to absolutely everything all the time. Spiritual bypassing. This one's a delicate one, but cannot continue if you want to really process grief. And saying, I'm fine. That being said, I'm a big supporter of saying you're fine if it's not the right person to talk to about grief. You got to pick your people very carefully. Some people, you should not even allow that energy to come in. You can't open it to them. So saying I'm fine is the right way to go. If you resist the grief, we believe we should not feel it. And so grief will intensify by the nature of energy that it brings into your life. If you're afraid of feeling it, you will isolate and shut down, most likely. And then grief will surge up and overwhelm you in the most unexpected moments. So you're just driving and then you'll break down like that. Narrative amplification. This is when you ruminate and the grief, lost my words again. Grief will feel more intense. You ruminate about this, about that, about how it could have been, and self-judgment that you shouldn't be feeling grief because it makes you weak. All of this is going to delay healthy grief from appearing. Anyone do this? Know this?
Yeah.
Yes, me. Yeah.
Different moments.
I mean, there are some reasons why I cannot process because there's a lot of things happening, like running different work things. But I didn't realize that all my straight A's and all my need for achievement were coming from this too. When I was growing up, to stop and feel my feelings would have been too much. So I overperformed. It did very well, but at such a heavy cost. So I realized, oh, this is what was happening too. That's my high functioning of grief. I think we know this one here. Everyone in this room, I know. We actually online too. We are very good at functioning on grief. So I want to talk about delayed grief. We talked about it already, but this is the grief that appears when you have had it, but you didn't realize you had it. Like when you're processing your childhood, you're processing an event that happened in the past, and you realize it was way worse than you thought it was. You had it way harder than you realized it was. Or you witnessed things that you didn't realize were so bad. Now that you come to think about it and feel it, that was horrific. It didn't happen to you, but you witnessed it maybe to your siblings. This is delayed grief. So you feel the grief that this is really your story. This is why it can feel like the healing process gets worse. If you've done hypnotherapy, after that, you can feel raw, strange, uncomfortable. That's the processing of grief. You can feel mourning, like you're missing something. That's processing of grief. So please know, this is not going to stay like this if it's done properly. It will move out. But this is normal. That's why with healing, now it's less and less possible to just say one session if you're trying to address childhood trauma. It's a whole process. Right. So there's a client case. I'm not going to tell you about this one, but this client comes in. She's overachiever. She's phenomenal. In fact, I think some of you may know of her because she's done very well in Indonesia. And when I say powerhouse, I mean powerhouse. When you sit with her, it's ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. So she comes in because she's an overachiever. And she realizes that when her husband is not doing things according to how she wants, she gets so pissed. But she shouldn't be like that because, of course, it's her husband and they have children and all of this. So imperfections and things not doing properly get her really riled up. So we're doing the session. Now she wants to look at overachieving. She wants to look at anxiety. This is all comes together. In the end, she never even mentioned these root causes in our debrief, in our intake. We go to the root cause, and it goes to the first one will be when she is around 20 to 25. She's getting engaged. And she finds out that this fiance was not faithful. In that dynamic with the religion she has, Indonesia is very community-based, right? When she discovers this and she feels shocked, she's also grieving that she's not going to continue on this path with him, the future narrative, what this means for her family name, what it means for her. But in there, we go deeper and we go to an even earlier root cause at the age of 6, where her parents didn't hold space for her. That's the shortest way I can say it. They punished her for not acting accordingly to how she should have been acting. So she was meant to stand outside. Neighbors saw her standing outside, missing dinner. Father said, if you don't do this, you go outside. So she went outside. And there's shame, there's rejection, there's anger. So it becomes more rebellious. It starts from there. In there, the identity is, I'm not important to protect. What's my meaning? My parents don't love me. That's the conclusion. And in there, there's a hollowness. My parents don't love me. So she has this growing up, and she's carrying it all the way till now. In the intake, she said that in the last 5 years, she's been feeling more and more and more fatigued, even though she's getting more and more and more successful. We do this one session. I did say, okay, we'll do everything we can in that session. Please come back if you need to. In the follow-up, I've been waking up with no fatigue. I am not even concerned about what my husband's doing right or wrong. I am so much more relaxed, all because we processed the initial grief, which she didn't even tell me this happened in the intake. The grief that she was shamed, rejected, and the relationship didn't go forward, and the grief for being shamed by her parents. That actually she feels unloved. That is how it appears as an adult. I did not foresee that. She certainly didn't, that it's heartbreak, rejection. And that lifted the fatigue. Now, in very good news for everyone who may be concerned about feeling like they're always going to feel grief, there are actually 4 scientifically studied longitudinal research how you can experience grief. So in this case, with this woman, she carried it on because the experience she had didn't allow for her to process the grief at a young age. She didn't have anyone, no support, no sibling, no mentor, nothing. She was unprotected. So she grew more and more independent because if I'm not loved, I have to work for my parents' love, grows like this. And now she's overachieving and now everything annoys her when it's a little bit off. This is different than someone who's going through a experience, one-off, like traumatic experience, war, loss. There's a few more. Hold on, let me make sure yeah. These Okay, war, loss, these types of things. Oh, also from 9/11, those kinds of events. This is coming from that. So it turns out that the most common trajectory we all have for those types of incidents, thankfully, 50 to 60% of us, is going to be the resilient one. That you're going to experience symptoms, yearning, brain fog. You're going to experience fatigue, heaviness in chest. You're going to have these kinds of flashbacks, normal, maybe 1 to 2 years. 50 to 60%. After that, it goes down and you can carry it comfortably. That's the good news. That's predominant amount of people here. Then you have the recovery trajectory. In this case, you have high distress after the loss, and then it's followed by gradual emotional recovery time. And that is 15 to 25%. That's a big range, I know. But there we go. Then we have chronic grief trajectory. Don't worry, it's 10 to 15%. It does not go down. You're continuously feeling the symptoms of yearning, loss, emptiness, hollowness, fatigue, dysregulation. And then you have delayed grief. Initial stability, numbness, and then distress increases. So let's look at this in the graph. That is, oh, sorry, maybe, I hope you can see it on the screen, on the Zoom. That's the chronic ones. This leads to clinical issues. This is most of us. We, of course, will have high symptoms, 1 to 2 years, 1 to 2 years, but the symptoms will go down. And some of us delayed. That's, for example, in my case, childhood trauma, delayed grief. Or people who don't have time to process the grief because they have to do the funeral arrangements, take care of their children. It can be like that. Oh, sorry, resilience. That's the one. And this is the recovery. Yeah. Interestingly, and I always will only quote myself, please, so you can relate. There's a lot of grief in my life, but when my father passed, and my father and I are very close, I had the resilience one. And I was like, how could that be? Is it because I'm so used to grief? Is it because I really spent time with him? I had anticipatory grief with him for 4 years after my sister passed. We were together. I could see him aging and breaking down. What is it? But I realized you'll find out how it helps you to have the things that the tools to overcome it. I had all of that and I didn't know. Thankfully, I'm really grateful to the people in my life who were there because community is a very big thing to help you with grief. So this helps for this resilience one. Okay. So what this changed, this particular research, is that there is no, you can screenshot this, because there is no one way to grieve, depending on your conditions. If you got to take care of children, if you got to work, you may not have time to grieve. That could be the delayed one or the recovery one. This is okay. It will move. The one I'm most concerned is the chronic one. We don't want to be up there. That's really key. And culturally, people grieve differently. Some don't show tears. Some show a lot of tears. And yeah, that the challenge is that you have to go through the stages of anger and sadness. You know this Kubler-Ross stages of grief? That's a very common reference to grief. That is not actually for grief. That is for people who are dying. But that's really used everywhere for the stages of grief we go through. It's not accurate. You don't go from anger to guilt to whatever order it is. And you don't always need to process grief, like sit there and do the hypnotherapy. You don't need to do that. You can see that by going back to life, you will benefit. So intensity of the grief does not measure the love. Is another key takeaway. How you've coped with grief, how you've experienced grief, what tools you have, that is going to affect the way you're experiencing the grief. Yeah. They show resilience because of this: psychological flexibility, stable meaning frameworks, strong attachment security. It makes me think, if we have children or loved ones, if we say to them, mommy's never going to leave you, if we say something like that, or I know why we do it, I know why I've shared that kind of energy, but is that setting the child experience up in the best way? Is that giving the right assumption of the world? So let's get to this. Living fully while honoring the grief. So we can go from here, now we're going back up.
Did you say the other client profile that you skipped over?
Yeah, I changed the overachieving one for that one.
Oh.
Yeah. Because I have to honor time since the team always tells me I go over time. Is that okay? If we're a little bit over, I hope. If you got to go, I understand. So here, living fully. Please know, when you're grieving and you want to move on, it does not mean you need to forget. In fact, it's the opposite of that. You do not want to forget. It does not mean you're moving on from them, you're dropping them, or you're going to eliminate them, or whatever was lost. It does not mean that. What it does mean is you're learning to live with this grief. And you may be like, but that doesn't feel good. But the wisdom that comes with grief, the expansion and the honor of living life with grief, this changes you. It humbles you. It makes you feel more connected to reality, to the truth of life, that everything is impermanent. So you must let grief change you. You must let grief evolve you. And if it needs to break you a little bit, let it. That is very important to take away for that. The grief will always say, this mattered. That's what its message is. Not that you're weak, not that you're a failure, not that you're not strong. So you can choose to suffer, though. And I mean constant suffering, because grief will bring pain and it will bring suffering. But the constant suffering, that is not necessary. Let me show you how you can have constant suffering. You will have pain because you lost something. But constant suffering will mean it should not have happened. This is not right. That's how it can appear. I should not feel this relief. That is not what we want. This should not exist. Like, oh, let's romanticize this loss or pain. People do that. I must eliminate this weakness. This is how you perpetuate the suffering that comes with grief. Another one that I choose, I have to be careful because time does help, but we see in the graph. But if we say time will heal this in that dismissive way, that should be in there. But I didn't want that only in there because we have to have some concept that actually, understanding that actually helps. So with grief, if you're a mother or father, the love for your child does not end if they have passed. The grief actually shapes the way the love takes place in their absence. For partners with their lovers, the continuing bonds we'll look at, this does not mean that it will erase them. It does not mean you have to forget them. It does not mean that you will never refer to them or that you will not talk about them. And for those who are supporters like myself or caregivers, you go to a lot of places, for example, that need a lot of help. You feel helplessness. That's part of grief too. And it's not a weakness. That's part of it. And that is actually going to help you understand how to help them. So I'm referring to it again because it's so important. We do not want to do this. That's not living fully with grief. We don't want to stay busy, intellectualize all of this resistance. Let's talk about what does help. Here are 8 research-based things that help. I didn't even know this, and probably you guys didn't know this. However, you're already doing it. Move between grieving and living. This is research-based by Strobe and Schutz, that you're not going to be only grieving, because what does that do? Sorry, you're going to be ruminating and depressed. But if you just live and you don't want to grieve, you're going to end up emotional suppression. And we know this physiologically destroys your system. Okay, that's so dramatic. It negatively impacts your system. My apologies. Yeah. So when you're feeling that you go between loss oriented, oh, what's my life without this person or without this future or whatever it may be, or if I know I have a chronic illness, what's my life going to be? And you go between restoration mode. Go between these two. What does this look like practically? Screenshot it if you need. Today, I will grieve some. I'm going to grieve some more in meditation. I'm going to take an extra hour and just cry. Or I'm going to write in my journal or to the loved ones. And then I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to go be my friend. You go back and engage with life. Some days you don't grieve because it's not there, and some days you do. So if anyone tells you to please grieve, stay in your room, you should be grieving because your father, lover, whoever passed away, please don't. That sometimes is how we get, our clients will say that they should be grieving, they don't leave their house. This is cultural, societal expectations. But if you just go out and do nothing else but live, you're not grieving. So please go between these two and feel how it is each day. This is key, number one. Number two, love does not disappear, whether you've broken up or the person has died. This is where continuing bonds is important. The older models of grief were like, let it go, let it go, let it go. No, this research, so beautiful actually, by Class and all, they look at this continuing bond, shows that the healthy grieving is that you develop an inner relationship to this person, even if they're alive. You said goodbye, but it's still within you. So you can do this through memory, the values, the stories, the way the person shaped you. You can talk to them internally. Keep the traditions you used to have together. Maybe it's in one of the cases, whenever they go for dinner or eat at home, they always light a candle. So her husband passed away, she still lights a candle. You carry the values that they had forward. Like my father's values, whatever they were, one of them is to always keep on learning. So I'm making sure to pass that to his grandchildren. And I always feel him when I do this. Remembering them during important moments. So for some people, like who got married and their parents passed away right before, they had the photos of their parents there or their siblings. Practical tools. You write letters to them, maybe monthly, maybe weekly, maybe once a year. Ask yourself, what part of them continues in me? What have they changed in me? And that you continue to live out. This actually reduces complicated grief and promotes meaning integration. Creating rituals of remembrance. In Bali, we use a lot of incense. When I use the incense, I'm sure many of you too, you make a prayer. And I do it to honor my ancestor, my sister who's passed, my father who's passed. And I know some of you do that too. It can be visiting their grave, honoring their birthday or their passing date by visiting it or making a memorial. One of the things, for example, my nephew does to honor his mother, my sister, we have a balloon at Finn, and we have a balloon and we write a note to his mom, my sister, and we let it go each time. Wherever you are, mom, in heaven, like this. Setting a place for them. Ooh, no. Setting a place for them every holiday gathering. If you have an altar, you put a statue for them or a photo for them. Maybe you have like a necklace from them, something like this. Or you plant a tree or a garden in your garden. This, across cultures, has been one of the most powerful ways to process grief, to feel the grief. There's so much data supporting these rituals are so beneficial. Then you create new meaning. You want to go back?
This way.
You know, there was a study done that participants were feeling unhappy and about life. Two groups got $100. This group just sat with $100, did nothing. This group had to go through a ritual-like process. They didn't know what they were doing. They just had to go through it. They both felt no good. The ones who did this ritualized process, like cord cutting or something like this, they felt increased positive feelings afterwards. This is why in all cultures, we have rituals, we have funerals, we have, in Islamic cultures, Buddhist, all of this is important. So please honor that. All right. 4, create new meaning. This is so important, where you're not just healing, you're literally rebuilding your meaning of life, who you are. So, of course, you have messages from the person that you've lost. You carry them on. You actually deepen the compassion towards it, and you may support others through that. Now, many parents, for example, when you know the road accidents that happen in the States, the mother lost her child to a drunk driver. What did she do with that grief? She started a whole movement for drunk driving to catch people who are drunk driving. That's what it means to create new meaning. That my child who's maybe died of this cancer, we're going to create a whole movement to research how we can avoid letting children pass away so quickly from this cancer, like that. So the questions are, what has this taught me about life, about myself, about love? And you create something from it. What actions can I take with this change? So what did this heartbreak, even though you chose to break up, what did it teach me? What can I do with this? How can I better love? Then you want to express your grief. Please express your grief however you want. This is so important. There is no right or wrong way. There are two main ways that we express grief. Again, emotional expression, crying, talking, tears, but also instrumental grieving, which is by reflection, thinking, problem solving, doing active activities. Both are valid. So, one of the unique ones for women who are masculine, who are intellectualizing, and men who are doing this too, is movement. Movement, music, singing. This is great. Conversation, prayer, or meditation. But you just need to make sure you express it. If it's crying, cry. Talking, talk. 6, tell the story of your loss. This is really, really key to integrate the loss into your new identity. If you don't speak about it, and you know some people don't, they don't want to talk about it, you're not updating your inner world. So you can tell the story of what happened. You can reflect on the relationship at different times in the grieving process. Who is this person in your life? What did they bring into your world? Oh, my grandfather taught me this. That's how you honor your grandfather who's passed, or your grandmother, or your teacher that you no longer have now. Share this with someone who's safe. Number 7, community and witnessing. You know, grief is probably the one thing we always will all have commonality and experience. They say love is. So that could also be another one. But I know that some people just don't have the understanding of concept of love. It's very foreign to them because they're so, but when you feel the helplessness of grief and the yearning of grief, that one, I find more clients can relate to it. So we all feel this feeling of grief, of heartbreak, of loss. And strangely, we find ourselves isolating more when we're grieving, right? You walk alone with this. And that's the one thing that bonds us as humans, because we all know death is here, death in relationships and physical. And so the social support is key. This is one of the strongest protective factors in bereavement, strongest protective factors. Grief groups are very good. Friends listening. Of course, if you have a certain person you work with, great. Community rituals, like when your family gets together for the passing of somebody, family storytelling. Oh, remember when Opa or Oma or did that? This is really key. Now, I didn't have this when I was grieving, like when I was growing up. So I didn't know this was important. I just carried it on my own. And it was really until some of my friends who are my Maja colleagues made me realize, wait a minute, I don't need to be on my own. This is foreign. And so now that feeling is common. But I understand what it's like to not think it's not something you share. And of course, finally, self-compassion. Nervous system care. Speak kindly to yourself, which means, of course, this hurts. Of course, I feel heartbreak, even though I don't want to be with her or him. Of course, I miss him, even though I know he'll never come back into my life because he's passed or she's passed. If you've tried to have a child and you have infertility or you have a miscarriage, grieve that. Of course, I'm going to grieve. Every life you're creating inside your womb, your energy is going to it, your mind's going to it, it's loss. Your identity of being a potential mom, grieving that. So I'm allowed to take time to feel and grieve, is another one. It's safe to feel. Now, we need to rely on others in these moments for them to hold space. Again, please be mindful who you do rely on. Some people are not equipped to handle this. They can't even feel their own emotions, or they don't have the capacity to. They're already full. So if you find yourself opening up and it's not the right person, you can feel even more overwhelmed afterwards or hurt because you're opening up and you're raw and they can't hold you. This is the part where we need to be a bit more careful, a bit more thoughtful who we choose to open up to. Is this person equipped to hold me? That's really key for grief, because this will bring up so many things in the other person, things they have not grieved, things they don't want to grieve. So we got to choose them carefully. Also, because the person who says, oh, your pet dying, it doesn't matter, or you can try to have a baby. Again, their world assumptions are not the same as yours. Their assumption is a pet is a pet. It's not a human. Or the assumption that your body is going to work as like a doctor usually has this. So a lot of people grieve the way their doctor treats them. Your body is going to recover. That they don't maybe have the same assumption that there's emotional connection to what I've lost in my body. So we got to find the ones who have this understanding of the assumptions of the world we have. So here's your recap. When you do these things, you're doing these things. When you're oscillating, it means you're going with your nervous system. When you're oscillating between, oh, I'm feeling a lot. If you push through, you get dysregulated. So you want to maybe journal more, meditate more, cry more for another hour, 30 minutes, whatever it is, adapt. You're also emotionally processing. This is the key components I'm looking for in my hypnotherapy. This is what you can do on your own. So when someone comes to do grief work with me, I'm not going to say, okay, let's do nervous system regulation. No, they're going through it. We're going to find this in releasing emotions, in talking to the loved one they lost, in talking to the baby, the fetus that has passed. That's how they release the emotions, and then they reconstruct the new meaning. I'm going to move on. So please remember, the grief will come in waves. This is normal. You see, the graph is 2 years for the longitudinal studies. It's 2 years. It's going to come in waves. And to do this properly, we want to rebuild meaning, rebuild our identity. You're not the same human. You must allow it to change you. That's how you meet life, the new version of life. This is the only way you can expand your capacity. If you try to stay the same and not let it change you, you will not be able to live life. Living fully with grief means you are feeling it without collapsing. You're feeling it without forgetting. You're loving without forgetting. You're sharing with tenderness. And you're allowing joy and sorrow together. When you can do this, it means you're living fully with grief. It's walking with you. And it's actually quite humbling. It makes you really appreciate each moment. Really, each moment. Yeah, in this case, this woman was afraid to love again. Her work was not removing grief. Oh, yeah. Me? Okay. Yeah.
She was never really, she was never able to forget.
Yeah.
Also say thank you so much for this sharing.
Thank you. So And thank you, Eric. So the widower, oh yeah, so it wasn't about removing grief. It was actually allowing her to feel comfortable with grief, allowing her to feel the grief while she's loving. Because now she knows your partner may not be there forever. So with that, in closing, I would like for you, it's about 20 seconds. I'd like for you to go ahead and close your eyes and see how these words land for you. If we choose to love, we accept vulnerability to loss. If we choose to grow, we leave parts of ourselves behind. If we choose to live fully, we accept impermanence, change. Grief is everywhere in there. This is not about romanticizing it, because grief is painful, but this is about living fully, as it is worth opening myself to grief so that I may experience all the beauty that comes with it, all the joy, all the love, all the nourishment, because avoidance of it would mean I do not live life fully. So I remind myself now it is possible to carry grief and still live a meaningful life. It's possible to miss someone deeply and still experience joy, love, connection. The human heart has a capacity to hold both gracefully and tenderly. So the question I ask myself, how may I honor what I have lost while continuing to live fully and completely? You may open your eyes whenever you're ready. Thank you for being here today. Thank you for being here with this very tender topic, with all that you have brought.